Okay. So questions all good?
I love them, yeah. And it's very sweet what you wrote about me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm a fan of people such as yourself. Interesting, cool people. Yeah. Yeah. I'll just say that.
Where
Okay.
are you? Yeah, you're in Queensland, Australia, right?
I'm in Queensland, Australia, Brisbane, the capital of the state. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Just saying on tour with Lee Winnell because he's like a punk rocker. I
Okay.
don't know if you know that or have the
Yeah.
soul. Like he used to hang out with me and call me boss and tell me about all the great the bands from I think Melbourne. He said Melbourne was the most punk.
Definitely.
Or Sydney.
Brisbane.
Sydney.
No, it's definitely Melbourne, I'd say, because that's one of the live music capitals of the world. They're
Really?
consistently, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I've never visited you guys. We actually see over in New York City something like gray noise sound or something like that, which is the guy from the Lubricated Goats. So he plays
I,
in a
I
band. Do you know
okay.
Lubricated Goats?
No, sorry. Yeah, excuse my
They're
ignorance.
they're from your land. They're from your land.
Okay. Okay. Um, yeah. So you're punk rock specific with music, or do you expand much out of that,
I
out of that?
mean, the whole story, and I could tell it again if you wanted to hear it, is that when I was very little, I used to watch these movies about Hollywood, and you're on the strip, and you would see these amazing people, so Mohawks, rockabillys. I didn't even know what they were because I was really young, and I was utterly
Hmm.
fascinated in the way that they looked. And I always felt since I was very little like the world is like civilian, very beige, and the idea that someone would take it upon themselves to like wear all these things to make life a little bit more unique. Again, like 7 years old. Then around 13 years
Hmm.
old, I watched this movie Fear No Evil, and on the
Hmm.
soundtrack, it's Suicide, Rezillos, Ramones.
Hmm.
And when I hear the Sex Pistols and I hear the Ramones, it actually feels like the frequency of how I feel inside. I felt like how I was, but I
I
didn't
like
know like
that.
who
Nicely put.
so I didn't know who these bands were, and I went to my one of my friends, and she made me a mixtape. And when I looked to see what the Sex Pistols looked like, it was a style that I was unbelievably fascinated my whole life with. So I felt like how uncanny for that to
Okay,
happen. And
I
so
get
my
you.
focus, because I'm in this
Hmm.
area of the world, like we're listening to like a lot of British music. So like British punk, street punk, and hardcore is specifically the stuff that I listen to, which is why when I always answer the punk rock producing question, how are you as a punk rock in your world? It depends on what kind of punk rock you listen to. Sort of your
Yeah,
be in life.
okay.
It'll be about stand by your people, solidarity and crew. And so that's help your people out because I listen to
Uh,
like Agnostic Front and Sick of It All and things like that. So that's mostly what I
uh,
listen to. I listen
uh,
to like rockabilly, surf, like 50s music, old country, but I feel like it's all the same. We don't really deviate outside of that. So when you're in New York City, you say like punk, it means that you like all of that. It's like rock steady ska, rockabilly, psychobilly. It's the whole thing. So yes, punk.
yeah,
But it's defined regionally because I'm from
yeah.
New
Of course, of
Jersey, from
course.
the New York.
Yeah. Of course. There are certain general kind of like moral through lines in punk culture, regardless of what style you listen to, what region you're from, etc. And that is the help each other out, the do what yourself aesthetic. So what did I just say? I did just say do it yourself, didn't I? Sorry, yeah. Aesthetic,
DIY.
DIY. And that's yeah, and that definitely comes through in your movies there, Heather Buckley. Hello, children of the popcorn. Yes, it is I, Mr. Popcorn. I am speaking with Heather Buckley. I initially mentioned her when I was interviewing. They're also very cool and interesting and very creative. Jen Wexler for the Sacrifice Game interview. So now I have the fantastic opportunity to interview Heather Buckley, who I'm not sure of the exact details when it comes to the Sacrifice Game, but you are definitely a driving force behind one of my underground favorites there, Heather the Ranger. Yes, we will cover that on the pod there eventually their children. Yeah, so thank you for joining us today. How are you? How's New York going?
I mean, I'm in the land outside of it, Jersey City, but it's slightly summery. The sun's out. I've survived the
Hmm.
night. I mean, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, and yeah, it's 2 a.m. in the morning down here in Brisbane, Australian winter. Much colder, yeah, winter there in New York than you'd get here in Brisbane. But yeah, once you get used to it, it's okay. Once you get used to it, it's okay. So thank you very much for joining me here, there, Heather Buckley. So you've done a lot of producing of film, certainly. You're into film, you're into music, you're into culture, subculture, from a pointedly punk point of view. Yes, is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. Well, I mean, a lot of this stuff, it's like it's from my point of view, but as like I walk through life, it's like there's words for it and manifestations, and I think there's a certain sort of person type of person and archetype that moves back and forth through history. Since we're like in postmodernism, we call it punk. We call it being sort of like
Mm-hmm.
radical
Mm-hmm.
outside individual, with a crazy,
Mm-hmm.
crazy look.
Okay. Okay. Um, Now, all right, so like you've produced a lot of films, and this is a film podcast that focuses on horror films, yeah. And you've produced a hell of a lot of films. I saw 234 was your credit on IMDb at this point
That
to date.
that is my DVD supplement producing. So I do
Hmm.
Blu-ray for about a decade.
Okay, okay. That's yeah, that's basically yeah, that's an astonishing amount of work. That's an astonishing amount of work. What is the percentage? What's the ratio, just quickly, of that would be horror related?
For all my work or just my documentary work?
Let's just say all your work.
For genre specific, I would have to say like 93% or even higher. Because when I work for
Mhm,
places
mhm. Okay.
like Severin and Kino Lorber, there were movies that weren't genre. They're like really high end movies, like last year in Maiden Bar and Priest. And when I talk about the history of cinema, it's not sort of this gated community that we would believe when we look at Criterion and
Mhm,
things like that. The real history of cinema is regional. It's Rawhead Rex. It's Slugs. It's like what I mentioned, like Maidenbaugh. It's everything. And I think it's important to tell the story of process and the people behind the scenes as carefully as you would something like Citizen Kane.
mhm. Yes, I completely agree. I completely agree, and that's what I am trying to do down here with Evil Popcorn. We're focusing on independent Australian horror in our Australian horror series. We're looking at we're doing a horror iceberg at the moment. And the reason behind that is, yes, they are extreme, and some people think that, call them fucked up, and some of the times that's for good reason, but that is still a part of horror. That is still a part of cinema. And these things
I feel
lead
that
to,
way. I
sorry?
100% feel that way. I
Hmm.
feel that way about, because I was just mentioning stuff like Criterion. I was just watching, just watching it last night and watching Crimes of Passion on it.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
Criterion put
Nice.
out Solo, but
Hmm.
there is sort of like
Okay.
extreme thinking that I, as like a journalist, try to like support it for the same reasons that you're saying, because I don't think you should dismiss something because it's just gory. You shouldn't dismiss something
No.
because it's just shocking, because art is supposed to provoke and give an emotion, and even though you don't like to be provoked and not have that emotion, that shouldn't stop the validity of the art and the auteur of the art. I mean, I have my guinea pig box set in my other room.
Nice, nice. And about, I imagine it's right next to the Kubrick box set, yeah? Because
Yes.
yeah, because I know you're into I know you're into auteur works, you're into nuanced stories, but it's all with a very independent spirit, and a lot of the time it's through horror, through the horror lens, and The underground stuff, or people see the gory crap stuff, that's the punk stuff, though as well, if I'm getting where you're coming from, because that's the stuff that basically puts the nose to the grind and pushes it in your face and just keeps going. And that helps bleed to bigger stuff and more opportunities for people who work outside of the mainframe, even if it isn't in your face punk way. Not saying, I'm not trying to reduce punk to that, but do you know what I mean, Heather?
No, you're 100% correct, and I almost couldn't have said it better, because by showing people the world, because there's two things. There's like a paradox in punk, is that fuck these people, fuck the world, and be very nihilistic, but also
Mm-hmm.
like let me help the world in sort of in a broader sense. So I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
very strong movies that have a great message, like like a movie like Happiness, is going to
Oh, yeah,
show
yeah, yeah. Okay.
the reality that you know, and so your folks out in the audience who understand with you go like, I'm very happy you can see what I see, which is my relationship with these kind of movies, but also
Mm-hmm.
to open
Yeah.
people's eyes about how things are, because we just don't want to say that this is how it is, because I think in some sense it's like we believe because we were able to do it, is to just be more conscious, be an individual, think outside of it, kindness. And I think a lot of our kindness comes from
Yeah.
darkness. Seen a life
Yeah.
without, we've seen a world and live where these things don't exist. And so the
Mm-hmm.
idea that we can in our own night bring these sort of like stars and flashlights to the world and other people. So I feel like I'm always drawn in both directions, and the art that I was interested in is born sort of drawn in both directions as well. Not that everything needs to have a message, but I think even if you went to the most goriest torture porn film, we all might be seeing the same thing, because I'm talking about like a form of shock treatment. Like In a Glass Cage is a form of shock treatment. Salo is a
Sure.
form of shock treatment. Come and See. I was just watching Bleak Week over at the Paris a few weeks ago. That's like a form of shock treatment. Leah Forever. And sometimes sometimes the movie doesn't have any answers. And I guess what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying, it's like we feel that we can improve the world is because it's up to the audience and the viewer, do it yourself, to see what you've seen and do better, be
Yeah.
kinder,
Yeah.
understand what's going on,
Yeah.
more conscious. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's very interesting thinking about it, that the art creates no easy answers, but it is us, the viewer, who has been tasked with change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's quite profound. Yeah, yeah, that is quite profound. Um, and I think in the horror audience, horror creators, empathy is a big thing that is outside of other genres, if you will. Um, and that empathy, of course, is linked to kindness. Kindness is punk as fuck. So I could see that even the most gory and ridiculous, the most extreme and perverted, or the most trauma, but fueled, soaring art house piece, Hereditary, etc. Um, I think that you could see that, yeah, that kindness is punk as fuck. That drive there to help other people, even if the means aren't comfortable. Yeah, because we never want it to be comfortable, because what we're looking at isn't comfortable, because we go through uncomfortable things. Paraphrasing, you talked about horror is about sharing secrets of what you've seen in the world. I was on an interview at a festival and it struck me quite deeply. Yeah, yeah, because that's what initially why I was drawn to horror. It started with gangster and crime films, and then it was art house films, and that violence, to put it bluntly, mixed with that attention to detail, the mise en scene of everything. Um, that's what drew me to horror, and it's expanded out since then. Um, but that really struck me, and I will share a secret. I will share a secret. I've said it before on the pod that my father was not a good man, an abusive man, and I went through darkness as a child. As a child, yeah, that's why I was drawn to horror. There's a lot of us out there, children. I know there's a lot of us out there. Um, if I may ask there, Heather, do you have a secret that you've shared through your work implicitly or explicitly?
Well, in a sense, the way that I address secrets is like, so a lot of the work that I've done on my own as like a director and a producer is documentary filmmaking. Documentary
Okay.
filmmaking is the stories of the world, the nuance. Not only are you getting So the way I approach it differently, I approach it because I have a Gestalt Bauhaus design background. So before I was a filmmaker, I was a graphic
Oh,
designer for 13 years.
that's
And
interesting. I didn't
so,
know that. Okay.
yes. And so all my teachers went to Basel or to Yale, which are both like modernist programs about process, how things were made, how do you figure something out, how do you do that even before
Ah,
you get to the screen or the table or the pen and paper. And that
ah,
training helped me transition over to producing. So the work that I focus on, which I've always been interested in, is the archive of the process, how it was made, how do you approach your work, and those are amazing secrets. Those are
mhm,
amazing secrets
mm,
to hear stories, to participate, because that's also important. Because there's a lot of people who are collectors, collect information, and I've dealt with some of them while making DVD supplement producing, and it's like, I bought this, it's mine, I'm not going to share it. Any information that I could get, like from Walter Hill, from Joel Schumacher, from
mhm.
Beth B, from Lydia Lunch, like I want to share, to put it out in the world to share, so you also hear it, because
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's what they want, that's what we want people to know. And also, it's very interesting, if you watched the Lydia Lunch documentary, is the first time sort of a counterculture person talked about archiving, because everything she does, she archives, and it's critical to do that. And I feel like, looking at my background in back of me, if you saw my library, that I've everything that I have since I was 13 years old, when everybody was
Hmm.
selling their VHS, I didn't. And that's more about that. I know it's important, and I know what's precious, and I know it's unique,
Yeah.
which helped me when I'm a narrative filmmaker, find collaborators and look at projects, because I know what value looks like. But an example, here you go, The Ranger. So Jen is punk rock, I am punk rock. I helped out, you know, helping out Jen find the right people to put the soundtrack together, to create the graphics of the movie. I would talk to Jen, and she would ask me questions about the gear and what people are wearing. It's like, I straight lace people's boots. Some of the extras in the scene are wearing my
Uh-huh.
stuff that I wear every day. And that's the secret, because it's like this, when I read the script, it's like, who are these fucking assholes that love each other? Because I told her, it's like, if you're at a show and the people heckling the band so much are their friends. So like, East Coast punk is like this camaraderie. We're assholes, we're very funny, we stick together, we're our own family, we're absolutely ridiculous. And
Hmm.
when I read the Ranger script, all that was in it. I actually asked Jen, it's like, how did you know our secrets? Because before then, I wasn't talking to Jen about her music, but her and Jocko knew that world. And I noticed that she knew that world. And now, for the citizens of Earth, now you know a little bit about that world. Because though
Okay.
if
Okay.
we
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
come up with like a cinematic punk look, which looks like normal East Coast punk, a certain kind of who listens to a certain sort of music, and then was a little bit iconic and cinematic, which is also important. Because even if you get, because I told her, it's like, if you get punk wrong, like all the trauma punks will still love you. And we incorporate trauma punk aesthetic or Return of the Living Dead aesthetic. Like, I wear chains around my neck like Suicide, because I think it's a huge sense of humor in the scene. But I said, if you're too sincere and you don't get it right, that's when you're going to really run into problems. So you could be ridiculous about it and everybody will love you and literally incorporate that look into their own look,
Mm,
or you need to be close to spot on, that you
hmm.
observed it and you're putting it on
Hmm.
screen. I feel the most punk movie for me, and what I a lot of stuff that I get out of the punk scene, because it's like a family. People are going to take care of each other.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
With Suburbia, because Suburbia is about that part of it. And the reason a lot of times, like, crews, people, groups are dysfunctional is because you didn't have a parent raise you. You had to raise yourself. And like, a 7-year-old kid is not the best parent through their lives. So that's why Suburbia is interesting. It's interesting that as well. And I remember
Yeah.
it showed it at Alamo Draft House. I did the Q&A with Penelope Spheris, and she was telling me that she's sad because the way that she looks, like, she goes up to punk rockers because she's punk herself, but her look is very altered. And she goes, like, sometimes it's sad that they don't know I'm punk. I like people to know, because we could go back to like punk rock and outsider and horror films. When I went to
Yeah.
CBGB's first time. Everybody loved horror in the same way I did. They like the villains, they like the darkness. I tell people I like horror movies because it's about me. Because what is the movie called? Godzilla. It's about the other, it's about the creature, it's about the crazy looking thing. It's about the kid that, was made fun of and bullied and resurrects themselves out of a lake to go target, the people who were my own enemies growing up in middle school and high school. I mean, Kane Hodder and I are almost the same height. But those stories. And I think punk rock counterculture, because counterculture is like, I mean, the word itself, the opposite of culture, a different kind of culture, we're more subversive. So it's subversive. So it's subversive to look at Jason and see yourself in him, and see yourself like when you're just sort of a little girl in a dress with pigtails, the transformation into someone who wears black leather and a bihawk. And then you think of somebody like Dollarhide and Manhunter. It's like I'm interested in that film because he wants to transform his project of transformation isn't into the light, it's into the dark. It's want to be short of war from Bald Mountain. It's you owe me awe, but not in sort of any good way, in some sort of like menacing dark way. And that's the sort of persona taken on a lot of times for my brand, my company, Black Mansion, and the people that I work with.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I totally get it. Yeah, totally get it. Because there's interesting parallels to horror there again. There's the parallel that there's a sense of community that comes through it because you share a sense of empathy, and a lot of the time it's in reaction to a rebellion of oppressive forces, and seeing yourself in the darkness and being able to admit that safely in a cathartic and proudly, in a sense of community. Yes. And there's a legitimacy to that, an authenticity to that. And you do that through the promotion of your own self and what you put out there through your artwork and what you put out there for other people's artwork as well, which is what initially caught my attention with you there as a journalist, a humble journalist down here, wanting to get this culture and this way of thinking and being out there. Yeah. Which brings me to my next question, because we talked about the punk thing. We talked about representing the community. We've gone on all of that, and you've been asked that many times. What I'm curious, though, is that, you've produced a lot of work. You've worked fucking hard. Your films are getting out there. I hear it and I see it. The Ranger and Sacrifice Game in particular. Yeah. What have you got?
Well, I was going to say, we also have my Al Adamson doc.
Oh, please. Sorry, I forgot. Yes. Yeah, if you wanted to.
That I did with David Gregory. I think it's a very interesting doc for me because it's the only doc that talks about the filmmaker and also interviews the guy who killed him.
I watched yes. After you. After you.
I was going to say because that's something I did all the true crime producing on, and the regular producing to go after talent, but also all the true crime producing. And I would always urge people not to do true crime producing out of their living room. Okay, it's harrowing. Yeah. I interviewed Fred.
You interviewed who? Sorry,
Fred Fulford, who murdered Al Adamson.
Oh, you interviewed him.
To get that interview, yeah. So his interview on the doc when you see it, yeah. We talked to the PI people. We got them interviewed. They're very funny. Next door neighbors, exhuming footage, autopsy footage, court transcripts.
Oh, goddamn.
Getting all that. So when you watch the documentary, there is all that solid information there for me to, because a lot of my design process background is to learn how to do things, is to say, like, I have enough of a pattern that I can build in the other parts of the pattern. So that's why I think that that documentary is very interesting to me. And there's another movie that's in post about a sex worker trying to lift a curse in a trash town, untitled at the moment, which is moving through, which I did in New Orleans. I was 88 days on the ground, flying back and forth between making this movie, and I love it so much. There's such beautiful Greg Araki, Harmony Korine vibes in it. Woman writer, director. I was working with John daughters, and then working on this film. And then my latest one was writing Shotgun, which is a telephone movie, which we're just sending out the rough cut now, the screener to sales and distribution to see what they think. So that's what I've done since 2018. So that's about that's like 5 films since
Brilliant.
2018. That's also why I don't have feature films going back in the day, because I had another career. And in that career, I
Sure.
would hang out and I would write for Vulture, Dread Central,
Okay.
Diabolique,
Yeah.
Fangoria,
Yeah.
One Gourd Load magazine, and I would hang out at film festivals. And I was interested in figuring out
Okay.
in America, how do you make a Michael Haneke film? If you're not
Uh-huh.
asking governments to put in $20, how do you do
Love it.
that? And I
Love it.
realized the manifestation of Black Mansion, it's like that's what it really was. Because I know we want to talk about horror, but my expansive horror are really hard movies like that. It's like I will watch Terrorvision and Ghoulies too, because I also love ridiculous celebratory rubber monster stuff. But stuff like Seven Continent is something that
What's
I'm very
that?
making. Oh, that's
Excuse my ignorance.
no, that's a Michael Haneke film where the whole movie is each member of the family is committing suicide and killing each other.
Oh, wow.
And that's the whole thing. In film
God, he's
form,
great.
I watch 2 Haneke films a day, and that's one of them that I saw projected.
Mhm.
But I think movies like that, or when you look at The Piano Teacher, or House of Jack Bill, which is literally a serial killer horror movie, there's like a
Absolutely.
core version. And I said that there's a difference between going to the mall and buying bondage pants and buying something from Vivienne Westwood. And I feel like my brand alone, it's like I tried to give it like that high-end couture feel. It's also when I was very young and interested in what would be my final look, is that if you look at high-end couture magazines, they're taking a lot of street fashion. So not only did I see it in movies like Girl
Okay.
Just Want to Have Fun, but you'd read Harper's Bazaar and like the corsets, the vinyl, the latex, the makeup, the very high like triangle makeup that everybody had on. And I was
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
fascinated
yeah.
as well. It's like that was also punk. So that's around sort of like the inspirations for the brand. Also on
Okay.
maybe a little bit Psychic TV and NSK as well, and Subgenius, I think, with the ridiculousness of coming together, of when people coming together, like that is the brand, that is Black Mansion, even if it's virtually and all over the place. Because I tell people, it's like, I want to work with everybody, because that's where the story is. That's where the secrets are. That's where the stories are. That's where the authenticity that I want, because I want to hear those deep nuances about who these people are and what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Because another thing about doc work, not only are you capturing the process, is that I don't cut them down too much that you don't understand their personality or hanging out with them or their tics. I mean, there was this one interview that I did, this guy was just looking down the entire time. And I thought like how perfect that is, because that captures how he tells a story.
Mm. Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. There's no reason to change that. It'd be insulting to him to change that. Yeah. No, that's him. You want to capture that. Again, that's a hell of a resume. I know, a corny question, dad joke. When do you sleep? Yeah.
A little bit during the night, a little bit during the day.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's inspiring stuff. It's inspiring stuff.
I also
And
work with a team of people, so I don't.
yeah, of
So,
course, of course.
so I'm producing the DVD supplements. I work with so many great people. I'm working with great editors. I'm working with
Mhm.
great researchers, putting
Yeah.
stuff together. To name some names out in the world, it's like Ethan Halo has done my research and work with me for such a really long time. Or a big breakout was
Mhm.
putting together the Thing Disc. And he's great at research and writing questions, also because he's the person who transcribed all my interviews that we used to do in journalism. So he would transcribe them for me. So that's
Okay.
a great breakneck way of understanding how I ask questions and what type of questions that I ask. So he's an incredible researcher. We have Alice 13. She for a long time has been my DOP, beautiful critical work. I don't know what I would do without her. And
Hmm.
then I have my editors I work with. Mostly I work with James, who's also one of the main editors from Severin Films. I work with this guy Eli. I work with my friend Henry. Henry did Wolfman Has Nards. Eli Dorsey I met because I worked on We're Still Here, and he did all the rotoscoping for the VFX eyes.
That looks
And
really
then
good. I watched the
and then
trailer. I'm gonna watch that. We are
and I
still
was gonna
here.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, and everybody who said yes. So if these great talents or these great people don't say yes, that's also an
Hmm.
important part of this collaboration, to
Hmm.
give us some time to tell us the stories, to tell us the secrets. And that's how a lot of these things get made. So while I
Yeah.
feel in what I try to like create is sort of like almost like a tour producing, like Dilo De Laurentiis and like Corman and things like that, are people that are very interested in me, people who find the project, come up with the idea for the project and get it implemented or come up, but also on the other end, it's like creating a brand and a narrative so the
Hmm.
people want to work in this style, who want to be
Yes.
as dark and disturbing, it's safe in a way to work with me and my team, because there's not a lot of limits to sort of like the emotions that we want to provoke in our audience and the
Hmm.
stories that we want to tell in this very subversive, libertine sort of way. We just took on an intern, and Elise Solomon, right hand woman, awesome, by the way, rockabilly punk, you should really talk to her. She's amazing with strategy, she's an amazing producer, she could predict like what actors are going to be the next thing, and she's
Okay.
very complimentary because I don't come from a film background, she comes from Studio World USA. So I completely look up to her. She does an amazing job and helped me out. And on the other hand, I have Louise Ward, who is from the underground the way that I am, loves very fucked up stuff. I found her on Twitter when I was looking for someone to read my scripts. And I said, you know what my company's about? Because the company's not about like, people could send me a really great script, and that doesn't mean that I'm going to make it, because I want to make stuff that I want to see in the world and that I have the
Hmm.
connections to make. So
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be the
Okay.
greatest movie of all time. It's also because there's a lot of movies out there, again, like my Rubber Monster movies from the methylcellulose cycle, like movies like From Beyond, like my Ghoulies movies, like Alien Deadly Spawn, that I love more than anything else on earth. But those are not necessarily the movies that I want to make, because I sort of want to work in this European couture space. Like I want to feel like that's what my project is. Also, when I pitch, just to that
Interesting.
for a
Yeah.
moment, I tell
Please.
folks that these are the things that I want to make, but I don't want people to think that that's not who I am as a horror fan, right? Because that's one aspect of genre, and that's sort of like a brother, sister, sibling of genre, those type of movies. But
Hmm.
I love, like, I could watch like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 every day, and I have Chainsaw 2 on 35. And I love to watch like the most low budget, I ripped off VHS movie on Tubi, and not to make fun of it, not to be above it, but I love it. I mean, I have in my living room my analog TV that I watch my VHS on. So all those things are critically important
Yeah.
to me, because first and
Yeah.
foremost, I'm a horror fan, and that's pretty much any kind of horror. Like Ethan mentioned, it's like,
Same.
what
Same.
what kind of horror movies do you like? It's like I love horror movies. Sometimes they're about zombies, sometimes they're about werewolves. You go like, Heather, let's watch a movie. And if it's anything other than a horror movie, you have to convince me what it's about. But if it's a horror movie, it's like, put it on.
Hmm.
I don't care
Yeah. Yeah.
who's in it,
Exactly.
famous, not famous. That's why it's interesting pushing them out into the world, because you could go up against like an amazing Blumhouse movie, name cast. I mean, Maxine was just out there, and that was great. And you have Kevin Bacon, and those type of movies, which are great, can compete against the most ridiculous small movies out there, because the
Yeah.
audiences are drawn to genre. And I feel like from
Yeah.
a business perspective, the foreign sales looks at it more that way than a lot of the sales agents or people that I talk about here, who are still very cast focused. But I think it's to make the marketing of the movie easier, when actually the
Hmm.
marketing of the movie is like a cool image, that it's a horror movie, that it's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even
Long
though
legs, for example. Long legs just pretty much pulled that off. Yeah.
yeah, no,
Because
I
they'd
found
skew
Long
with the
Legs
fuck out of
delightful.
Nick Cage. Yeah. So I say that
Yeah.
again, please.
Oh, I felt it was delightful,
Yeah.
because I love Osgood Perkins' work. I think it's
Well,
full of
yeah.
like this
One of
beautiful
my
dread.
favorites. Hmm.
So at TIFF, I saw February for the first time, which became Black Coat's Daughter, and it was so incredible. It was unbelievably incredible. And so
Yeah.
there's very
Love it.
few
Love it.
contemporary directors that I'm going to go based on their name. I'm going to see it. And one of the names maybe highest on my list is Osgood Perkins. And when I saw
Mhm.
it, because I wanted something that was like, oh, deeply dreadful. The vibes of like Lost Highway were brought up to 11. But this one is fucking delightful. It's delightful. It's funny. It's
Yeah.
audacious. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm gonna now tell you everything that's gonna go on in film. It has an interesting way of writing. It has a strange three parts to it. And I think
Hmm.
some people may have not liked it because they didn't like the structure or they didn't sort of like the ridiculous quality of the storytelling. But I think that's why
Yeah.
it's so successful because it's not fun in the traditional way like movies like Child's Play are fun or slashers are fun. It has like a very quirky, weird, ridiculous, wanting to have a good time, and yet still being aesthetic, still being satanic. It's great. Also, I like
Yeah.
someone that
Yeah.
comes out and is like satanic, like a couple minutes into the film. It's like this is all about devil worship. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna
Totally.
I'm not gonna like
Totally.
feel it at the end. It's like we're just
Yeah.
this is who we are, and this is the ride that we're into. And I think like that
Hmm.
kind of combination, because there's always a discussion in the marketplace. Like people were shocked. It's like, oh, everyone saw Terrifier. It's like if you stop thinking like the people who put stuff out, if you stop thinking it's like you know better and look into the general pop, look into your heart as a horror filmmaker, look into gen pop, look into social media, what people are looking for. There's a huge faction of horror audiences or bigger audience that wants something that's more like a horror movie. And like Elevated brings us into different spaces, and that's always been a different type of horror movie. It's always been The Exorcist. It's always been Rosemary's Baby, right? On a
Yeah.
much bigger budget than what we're looking at in like the A24 elevated horror space. But people want gore. People want mayhem. I think
They
people
do.
miss saw movies. Everybody like wants to go like, I want a slasher film. Everybody watched In a Violent Nature,
Hmm.
which is great. I saw it at
Hmm.
Sundance, and a Sundance crowd like going crazy and cheering for a horror movie. I think it was great. Also, I love the movie because you get to hang out with the Jason the entire time, and that's who you want to
Yeah.
hang out with. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Totally.
want to hang out
Totally.
with Jason, you
Horror
don't.
is horror is absolutely killing it at the moment. And there's all the talk, of the this after historical tragedies such as 9/11, the pandemic, horror's reflection of that, aliens in the 1950s, etc. But horror is like the first genre, like when, pretty much when the train came into the station, people were running out of the cinema. You know what I mean? That response, that release, that response. And but the world is dark, the world is crazy, and Art the Clown, I think, does speak to that. And the need for gore is just a fun release, like going on a goddamn roller coaster, yeah, which is pretty
Yes,
much what the squares do. It's the equivalent, yeah. Um,
so you shouldn't be shocked or
no,
surprised that people are
no,
into the
yeah,
movies.
yeah. It doesn't
But some
make
people
people a
are like, how
sicko
come this
because they
movie made
watch.
so much money? Why is
Yeah,
Longlegs so successful? It's like,
yeah.
think about when we traditionally look at horror films, the classic definition of what we considered back in the day, there's a space for them. There's a space for fun horror.
Yeah.
There's a space for slashers and rubber monster
All
movies.
all horror, absolutely. To that note, are there any what other horrors have stood out to you in recent times? Like Longlegs is the most recent. How did you find Maxine? I haven't seen it yet, so without spoilers, what did you think?
I thought it was very solid. It was really great
Mhm.
to watch. There's a lot of vibes of House of the Devil in it.
Okay, interesting. Interesting. He really layers on the aesthetics with this one, yeah, with this decade being the 80s, more so than
It's it's the set pieces for me.
set
There's
pieces.
set
Okay,
pieces, there's incredible
fantastic.
set piece at Universal Studios, which is
Hmm.
like worth watching the movie at all. That's
Okay,
like it just
okay, gotcha.
watch that section, watch that scene. Also, the only spoiler that I'm gonna give you, like Larry Fessenden, of course, has a
Uh,
cameo in the movie, so he's in that scene
yeah.
as well. And also, I
Who
know
you've
the
worked with, I see you've
yeah, no,
worked
I love
with a few
Larry.
times.
Work
Yeah.
with Larry. Work with Peter Polk, who's been Ty's producer forever.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wish Ty West greatness on this movie. I think it's great. For me, it's the best of the three.
Ty thinks so as well. Yeah. I was
But
watching.
also the budget. There's also like if you're going to compare X or Pearl, this one has a real legit budget to it. So there is
Mhm.
something like from a narrative standpoint and the world building standpoint that he's able to do in this movie, given the resources. Because I feel he's given the resources to make this one. For me, the best genre film that I've seen this year is Vulcan Zadora.
I said that again.
Vulcan Zadora.
Elaborate, please, there, Heather. What is Volcanzadora?
All right, so the director who did Buzzard,
Mm-hmm.
Joel over in the Midwest, and it follows his folks that he had in his that he had in his other movies. His two like metalhead losers, one played by himself, and the other one played by his very close friend and sort of like his shining star as an actor. And they one is a metalhead, one is like a friend of a metalhead, but probably a metalhead, and they just go off into woods to complete a very profound task, and things go wrong. Now, the way that the movie's positioned, okay, so when I was at Tribeca Film Festival, I I looked at somebody sent me the party invite, which looks like Faces of Death. So use the Faces of Death font.
Okay.
It had the skull and it had this weird device on it, and I was very interested in it. But the way the movie was positioned, I wasn't sure, because a lot of times I don't have a lot of time to go into Tribeca, and I just gone to so many film festivals. But someone at that party told me what the movie's about, which is people would consider a spoiler, but I don't consider a spoiler. And based on what it was about, I had to see the movie more than anything else on earth. So much so that I saw Sorcerer over at Bleak Week and the Paris theaters up like in the 50s, close to 60s, that I went down to Tribeca. I walked mostly down because it's to do in New York City to see Vulcan Zadora, and I thought it was incredible. I thought it was
Okay.
absolutely incredible. It's
Okay.
John Troyus's work, and it's
Fantastic.
just
I will certainly
great. And
check it out.
so we were talking about metalheads, because growing up, there was no punk rockers in my school. I was the only one, but the metalheads are the one that adopted me. So I'm always very interested at them, because they're like civilians, but they're also 15% not like civilians, and they unironically like a lot of stuff that people would find ridiculous, like Manowar and like Manowar covers, but they don't look at it that way. They don't go like, I'm looking at it an ironic way. Because I feel like some punk rock, because we're always taking the piss out of things, is that we would look at it as like, oh my God, Dragon's Night, so tacky. But there's a place
Yeah.
in their of
Yeah.
true authenticity for this work.
Absolutely.
And while I would
Yes.
go see Agnostic Front, like straight face, arms folded, I have gone to metal shows with my friends to see Coven, to see what else have I seen? Sleep,
Uh-huh.
and
Okay.
Slayer. Slayer's a big one of them. And the Slayer people brought their families, their
Yeah,
kids,
totally. It's a
everybody
family
was
affair nowadays. Yeah.
smiling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody was smiling and happy. And the music isn't like smiling, like Slayer's not smiling, happy music, but they're
No,
so happy to
it's
be
Art
there.
the Clown music.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I just thought there's something wonderful about a metalhead. And I make sure that I always have metalheads in my life and that they're close to my heart.
Okay. I am part metalhead myself, Heather, so I appreciate that sentiment. Thank you. Yeah, I
What
couldn't agree
percentage
more.
are you metalhead?
Oh, okay. How do I stand? I would be about nowadays. I grew up going through many subcultures in an attempt to find myself. Now, the two that struck to me, the foray, the symbol that whatever, let's say Satan, threw down in front of me to turn me to alternative culture was going to a library and finding The Cure's Disintegration. The cover just struck me, had to listen to it. It all expanded out from there. Cinema-wise, Ken Russell's Gothic. That was those two, yeah, doorways just changed my world.
Are
So
you
there is
goth?
I grew up goth, and it's still a part of me, even though I do listen to metal, hip hop, electronic, all sorts of stuff. Yeah. And I don't necessarily, as you can see, dress goth. I'd be probably kicked out of a goth club if I walked in there now dressed like this. But yeah, no, I'm still goth, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. Well, I always tell people I'm 15% death rock, but part of the meme, they have the meme of like Henry Rollins shaking Nick Cave's hands. And I said, because of this accord is, why I have a lot of goth industrial people in my life and
Yeah,
who work with me. I recently did a short film that half of the
that's
crew
cool.
were my goth friends, and it was very awesome, because the big secret of Black Mansion is that working with and finding crew that are within my counterculture or the broader
Yeah.
counterculture.
Yeah.
and bringing
Yeah.
them on set, because there's sort of like a culture of ride or die, of art first, of doing the work first, of camaraderie, empathy that you've said many times. But yeah,
Mhm.
Curated Disintegration, one of the best albums of all time.
Absolutely is. Yeah.
Desert Island album. It is incredible. And my
Mhm.
favorite one on it is the Untitled track at the end. I think is one of the
Oh,
most beautiful.
Untitled. Yeah, 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 yeah. Untitled's beautiful. Untitled's beautiful. Oh, it's a tough one. There's many, many. Because I'm a music video person, and after Never Enough, I saw Lullaby. Yeah, and that terrified me. Yeah, the music video and the concept. Yeah, but I loved it at the same time because I was discovering Nightmare on Elm Street and Chucky pretty much at the same time as well. Not soon after Ken Russell's Gothic. Yeah. Yeah, all good stuff, all good stuff. A lot of the questions I've skipped over here because they've come up in the natural flow of the conversation and or have become irrelevant. There was a question, what would you do if you got a big budget? But I'm pretty much getting the point. Like, and what would you do if you got a big budget? And do you think, would you be not afraid to, what would you do to avoid your film becoming sullied by the studio expectations and that sort of thing? Say, your film's really got out there and you got those offers, but what you've said through who you are and your how you look at life and art and Black Mansion Films, and how you work together with other people, I'm just going to assume that you wouldn't do something you weren't happy doing. You've talked about the auteur work that you want to do through Black Mansion Film, through the collective spirit, the punk rock spirit. If someone came in with a big budget, not as simple as say like Marvel or something, let's say Blumhouse, let's go. If Blumhouse asked you to do a movie, yeah, but under their current stipulations, and I've talked about it on here before, that it's PG-13 and it's basically almost becoming like the Disneyfication of horror. Would you step into that if you're offered enough money, or would you tell them to go fuck themselves?
Well, truth be told, I'm friends with the Blumhouse folks.
This is
Nothing.
yeah, I don't. This
I'm
is
just saying. I'm gonna
general,
say
nothing
because
towards anyone.
because
Yeah, yeah.
I literally had this conversation with Blumhouse, which is very
Okay,
interesting.
okay,
Yeah,
please.
the stuff that's on my slate is very nuanced, auteur driven, and sort of like outside their brand. I know Ryan very well, who works at Blumhouse, and
Okay,
we've
yeah.
discussed this before. He's also the one that says you need to see Halloween Ends. You're gonna love it so much, and I totally fucking love Halloween Ends. And for that reason, people would go like, Heather, make all the movies, and then we're like, Heather, now we're revoking your license because you like Halloween Ends. But I loved Halloween Ends. But I do think about that, and I was actually in conversation with a producer, like, how would I approach something like that? Because it wouldn't be something on the slate. It would be something that was written for it. But the way that I would retain the stuff that I want to say is the character. It's like the
Yeah,
characters
cool.
being outsider, the characters being flawed.
That's
Um,
cool. Yeah.
I maybe like the girl is sort of like a middle class sort of like femcel girl, and what she's doing with her life. So it's the idea of keeping the subversion and and the complexity of the characters moving into this place. Because I got to tell you, as someone who's a fan of all horror, rubber monsters or not, I will watch PG-13 horror movies. I will watch comedy horrors, which people don't like Transylvania Twist. Transylvania 65000, Saturday the 14th, Saturday the 14th Strikes Back. They're all very crack party to me. So I'm like for G horror, I'm for PG-13 horror, I'm for YA horror. I think Jen sort of works in that space that's much more gentle than the brutalist things that I also love and inspired by. But I enjoy watching all those things. So that would be, if tasked by Blumhouse or wanting to submit something to Blumhouse, that is how I would approach it. And there would be like some supernatural elements. It would be contained. It would be something that was like over 7 million. But yeah, because there's an opportunity to bring different sort of actors, faces, backgrounds, genders, all the colors.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah, that's punk rock. That's punk.
That's important to me. Yeah, and people want to use the word diversity, and it's like, no, why don't we talk about, like, you want to work with the most coolest, awesome people, and they look like everybody.
Yeah.
And you
because that's what everybody wants.
Yes, as well. I was on a panel at Calvary Underground Film Festival, and they were talking about the struggle for distributors to put out female driven movies, or movies by female filmmakers. They go like, oh, no one's going to watch this. Not out of my mouth, but out of the mouth of the sales agents on the panels. And then I pointed to everyone on the panel who are like so important bookers of the Film Fest world. And it's like, that's what the Film Fest world wants. South by Southwest, Fantasia, Sundance. Those are the stories that they want. And I just think, like, within some strata of the film industry, they're not looking at what Gen Z wants, Gen X wants. They go like, this is what I feel that they want. But let me tell you, I come from a world of data and advertising. And when I tell people, like, an audience is out there and folks are out there, that is not my opinion. That's what I've seen in the zeitgeist and people talking about it. And even outside our own genre world, because it's like, what's going on in politics? What kind of media do they look like? What kind of music is out in the world? And that's how you're assessing when you're doing like segmentation driven advertising. I used to read huge data decks of profiles of people, and you know, that's what they call segmentation, is like the different audiences that you're reaching out to.
Sure.
That's why I do all the marketing on the movies that I make, and Jen and I do all the marketing and creating a voice. You know, I ran the Ranger account for about 3 years, and the Ranger point of view is that
you came into my feed via that. It reached me.
Is that they're sort of like a drunk punk. And because they're a punk, when they played at film festivals, and they played with like Wolfman Has Nards, when they played with Revenge, is that the account or like the character of the Ranger account would like retweet it, because it's like, oh my God, we're playing with these movies, we're playing with that movies. And that's not, and people don't do that. Like a movie account is only going to promote their own movies. They're all going to promote their own news articles. They're not going to put a personality in it. They're not going to do that. And let me tell you, when I posted about Wolfman Has Nards, Henry, who has a movie on my slate, would retweet it out. And then we would create these great, because that's what social media marketing is. It's creating like a sharing system. So we did that, and all the bands that were on the soundtrack that beautifully gave us their songs, I would promote their work.
No, I love that.
Because I don't believe in scarcity. And I think like with like countercultural world as well, is that there's room for us all.
And it's also, I guess, a little bit, and I will tuck my chain a little bit with that. It's also not believing the hype as well, because I get what you're saying there with the films that these bigger studios that represent horror do want, these stories, yes, and hopefully Australia is starting to cotton on to that idea as well, and hopefully that builds. And our big breakthrough, I will say it, is Talk to Me, really broke through, and that's been backed up beautifully with Late Night with the Devil, the Australian American production shot down in Adelaide. And that's it's bringing your punk ethos into more accessible general horror, but working with everyone, and because everyone is just wanting to work together, and I think a lot of the hype, a lot of the negative discourse is kind of self-generated in an almost troll bot-like fashion via the internet, and occasionally, it gets caught into it. Sorry, after you.
No, I was gonna say like, because this is what you want to do, because there's representation in front of the screen, but there's also
Hmm.
like on these bigger productions, opportunity to like crew the movie with all different types of people.
Yeah, yeah,
And
definitely.
that's also important to me as well.
Hmm.
I mean,
Which is
and
the independent
what work,
spirit. This is what in the independent production horror, promotes. This is what it's building, and that idea is getting out there into mainstream films, etc. Sorry, after you.
well, because well, what you want is that if you have these very critical messages, the idea is that you need to get it in the hands of other people, which doesn't necessarily mean the work itself is more or less accessible. It means that you're trying to create a bigger and bigger platform to talk to
Mm,
people and to find your
precisely.
people.
Yeah,
That's why
precisely.
Nightbreed
Thank
was
you.
so important, because like CBGB's was like Midian, and everybody needed to find Midian. All the monsters needed to go there. I would want all the monsters to come to Black Mansion to work with me. And so I need a bigger and bigger light to find everybody. So so they see the works that could find me. Because when I was very young and in Central Jersey, I was like, I was interested in philosophy. When I was older, I was like reading Camus. And there was these touch points of people that thought like me and had like similar concepts, which were not like normal everyday Central Jersey society. And because of their messages and because of their art, it helped me form my identity. So if
Yeah,
I in any way can leave something behind
that's
that can
cool.
help with identity, to make people feel less alone, to go like, I feel that as well, even once in my career, that's critical to me. And
Hmm.
I think like the
Hmm.
art that I make should do that. Like the scripts that I feel and the collaborators that I want to work with.
Yeah,
And therefore it could
yeah,
be sort of like any sort of like YA PG-13
yeah,
studio style, with
that's
like
cool.
that's what I bring to it. I was also going to say like in the stuff that I work on, because my the first person to believe in me was my grandfather, who's like second generation Polish, World War II vet, artist, cantor. We used to draw together, because before even design, I'm a fine artist. I draw, I'm a draftsman. Is that
Nice.
he was disabled. I come from a long line of disabled people, and having that representation is incredibly important to me
Hmm.
as well. And I think about
Right.
that when I think about
That's
crew and people that I
yeah.
work with, stories, and people that look different than everybody else.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And yeah, it echoes what I demands a strong word, but when I, work with people or in projects and even the day jobs that I do, at the escape room that I work at in the horror maze, it is family, and it's not about who's right for the role, because I'm an actor, so I've had experience in, let's say, the more mainstream cinematic world, where a lot of prejudices come through and a lot of prejudices are conditioned, are basically mixed in, and so I broke away from that to work more on the fringe, but because of the acceptance and the awareness and the diversity and all of those good things. And there's just more, and there's just stories there. You know what I mean? There's interesting people that have gone through stuff and that sort of thing. And when you're working with horror, because it's a macabre escape room that I work at, and the horror maze is the horror maze, it's called Evil Corpse Shout Out. Not only do we work through stuff and create a sense of family, but so does our audience. Yeah, the people who go through the horror maze, they end up hugging us or hugging me. Work front of house, get them through there, get them happy, get them excited to go in, and even if they're afraid or they're in panic attack mode, Heather. Once they've come through, they're hugging me, saying thank you. Yeah.
I've also
So
been a
it's
haunt.
yeah, I love them. Big fan,
So
big fan.
over at
Yeah,
Blood Manor, I have a friend that works there, and I mean during COVID, I didn't do it, but I do one day for no cost at Blood
nice,
Manor in New York
fantastic.
City. So it's
Blood
one of my
Manor, yeah,
favorite
I've heard of
jobs
it. Yeah.
in the world, is to
Mm.
be absolutely frightening, because people ask me
Hmm.
to act because I'm tall and what I look like, and I do extra work in New York City, because it's like someone needs a punk rocker. It's like
So
it
I've
could be me.
seen on a rather big movie recently, on a recent post.
Yes,
That's very cool.
yes.
Very
I
cool.
think
Well
I was
done.
the only punk rock, like real punk rock extra with a mohawk there. But I think it's
Fantastic.
important as a
Yeah,
punk rocker to, to celebrate some of Arkham's villains that we're very much aligned and
yeah,
close to.
yeah.
But I feel sometimes I might be more like the Scarecrow than the Joker.
Ah. Scarecrow's an interesting one. Yeah, yeah. Someone asked me to do some cosplay photo work for Scarecrow because I play Herr Fleisch. Mr. Meat is the name of my front of house character at Evil Corp at the Maze. Yeah, they said I was channeling Scarecrow, and I've always been a Joker person, so I was going Scarecrow. That's interesting. Yeah, but so well done on that. Yeah,
Well,
extra
because
work
he's
there.
shocking and trying to terrify people to death. That's
Yeah,
what we're talking
yeah.
about at the beginning of the movie, the type of film.
But under a trusting guise though, yes,
Yes.
and yeah, and an institutionalized guise.
Well,
Yeah,
you want people to give them the true power is you want to have people give themselves to you. So
yeah, of
rather
course.
than take them, rather than to take them, it's part of the evil.
like a good horror movie. And on that note, there, I'm being conscientious of time. I don't want to keep you too long there. It's been a great conversation, so thank you again, there, Heather. Um, what's your favorite horrors of all time? You can say one, you can say three, whatever. It's up to
I'm
you.
gonna give you two: Texas
Thank you.
Chainsaw Massacre '74 and Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Henry, we want to cover that. Yeah, we've been thinking about covering that. I haven't seen that in a while, but that's chilling. I believe you.
John is a friend, and I have one of his projects on my slate. And if you go, like, if it wasn't sort of like a studio Blumhouse movie, if I had at least 7 to 10 million, I would be able to make the film that I have on my slate, co-written and directed by Don McNorton, which is a kaiju punk rock movie. It's like Godzilla meets Repo Man. And I think going forward, that's going to be a big focus to get that one off the ground.
Yeah, absolutely need more of that sort of thing. Yeah, bring the spirit of Tetsuo
I love his
back
work,
into the
Henry.
world. Yeah, Henry is beautiful. I believe on an interview, that's right. You reminded me. You called it the genre's taxi driver. That's a dope observation. Yeah, yeah. I'll get back to you once I've rewatched it. But that has really piqued my interest to rewatch it again. Because of course I love Taxi Driver, Martin Scorsese, Coppola, etc.,
Oh
etc.
yeah,
I
that's
grew
my
up on the
favorite movie
stuff.
of all time. I
Taxi
am God.
Driver.
Yes, I'm God's Lonely
Okay.
Man. I just recently bought Arlie Bremer's out of print book, which Taxi Driver is based on, The Assassin. And
Mhm.
I have sat down with Paul Schrader and talked to him about actually like
I'm envious
Haneke
of
blood
that.
vampires and stuff like
Yeah,
that. So I
yeah.
love his work, and I tell people at Black Mansion, it's Paul Schrader sized films. It's movies that are
Okay.
portraiture,
hmm
which are important because Taxi Driver is portraiture.
hmm
And I think it comes back
Absolutely.
from, again, documentary work. And I do documentary work because I did a lot of portraiture as a fine artist, the person, following them around, character studies.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Henry
Yeah.
is a character study. And they played Henry at Bleak Week. They showed John's print on 35. It was beautiful. And that's Rooker's first role.
Yeah. Children.
Those
Yeah.
two.
Enjoyed him
And
on Walking Dead.
Chainsaw's about a crazy family. And though they're all insane and unique looking, they love each other and stand up for one another.
hmm hmm
I've done a presentation on what I think chainsaw families are. They don't they accept one another. Nobody
hmm
cares other
hmm
face, lipstick, not lipstick. That's my sibling. That's someone who I love. They're very wild, but they protect each other. They are artists. They do their bone art. They're chefs. They're a creative family. They're
Entrepreneurs,
outside
entrepreneurs.
entrepreneurs, and two, yeah, and also one because the last gas, and they care about their family and their ancestors. So it's like
Yeah. Saw
mom and
his
grandpa
family.
are never
Absolutely.
gone from their heart and the
Yeah.
people in them. So I sincerely talked about the idea of a chainsaw family because I feel my
I love it.
sister and I both really loved Chainsaw 1 and 2 because of this search for family. And if that's not a punk rock family, I don't know what is. Because
Yeah.
everybody's
Yeah.
wild, everybody looks crazy, everyone's doing the best that they can, but a lot of times it's not good enough because we're
Yeah.
not given the tools as we
hmm
sort of into this
hmm
world.
Like
So
any
it's
good
great.
indie
I love
film crew,
Chainsaw.
definitely. And rest in peace, Tobe Hooper, if you want to talk about punk rock horror directors. Yeah.
Yes.
For me, one of the greatest of
Also
all
very
time, definitely.
political. His
Yeah.
work was very political.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The point. Even if, you don't read into films often, you watch Texas Chainsaw and you get it. Yeah. Even if you can't point it out, you feel it. Yeah,
Well, I
to
asked
put
him
it
who the
simply.
villains of the movie are, and it's like, and it's like both parts are our America. So he looks at it in a very neutral way. It's
Yeah,
like the rural people, the city people.
yeah,
There's
and
not really
how
a binary of good or bad because that's both
and
sides of the
yeah,
United States.
because we're all meat. Because this movie is also a movie about meat, which is also stated as well, which I love as well.
What did Clive Barker say? Everybody's a book of blood. Wherever we're open, we're red.
Yeah. Fantastic, fantastic. Texas Chainsaw is one of mine. Absolutely. Audition, I will throw out there. That ending will always stay with me. Yeah, that is
Yes.
one of the most beautiful reveals of all time. And the shot, chop off the foot, external through the window. She throws it at the window. You get that thud. Yeah, love shit like that. Yeah, that just, and also when evil lurks. That was like, yes. For me, that was pretty much everything. The feeling of dread and talking about messaging. Yeah, if you've seen that movie and if you don't quite know what it's about, have an interview with the director and he'll talk about what he's speaking for Argentina. Yes, especially rural people in Argentina. That movie struck me deeply, definitely. So
He's
those are
very
my three.
talented. I
Mm,
recently interviewed him for an MPI doc that I'm working on that I cannot reveal because it's not released yet, but it's a very notorious movie.
okay.
And we talked
Ooh,
about
ooh.
real death.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm keen for that. I'm keen for that. Um,
But he's great. He's great. When I was sometimes on a jury at a film fest, it was like fantastic fest. I was on the jury. His first movie came out, and we gave it best director because it was incredible.
that's for
Terrified.
Terrified. Yeah.
Yes.
That's where I first
Love it.
came upon
Love
him.
it. And
And
I love that little green child, the dead child, so much. So sweet. Camera on the dead child, and that there's so many monsters. Because again, like I
mhm,
mentioned, like make these like very drama driven, very disturbing portraiture
mhm.
movies. But I love a rubber monster and monsters so much.
Yeah. Yeah, and that
So
is a particularly
so
good
many
one.
monsters. We have
That
so
is a
many monsters.
particularly good one. Yeah. Yeah, its flexibility is something to behold. If you haven't seen it, I'll just say that. Uh, I put here what is the perfectly evil movie. We have a rating system on Evil Popcorn, Heather, that goes from burnt to flopcorn, satisfying, delicious to evil. So 5 out of 5 is evil. It's perfect movie, other people would call it. You just watch it and go, yes, this is me. This is a movie that is perfect for me. You did say Taxi Driver is your favorite. Is that the perfectly evil movie?
That
However
is
you
the
perceive evil after you.
Well, originally when I read this question, I thought it was like, what is evil, but not in like the cool rock and roll of evil. And I thought it was the Breakfast Club because what they did to Ali Sheedy's character at the end of the movie. And that is a truly evil movie.
That
And
is one of
John
the
Hughes
greatest
stopped
tragedies
that.
ever.
And then there's a version of it in Pretty in Pink with Ona.
hmm hmm
He
hmm
was like
Yeah.
latex wearing punk girl. It's like, oh, I met a preppy boy. It's like, what are you doing to us?
It broke my heart during the 80s, yeah, because that was one of my first, little avenues into the darkness. And at the end, it was just taken away and turned into this powder puff, like, literally as human form. Yeah, was not pleased. That's a so I'm gonna keep that. I'm gonna keep that there, Heather. That's an absolutely fantastic answer.
All right. So one of the roughest films, if we want to judge it like this, is
Please
this
go.
movie from the early '90s called The Checkist. Have you seen that?
The what? Sorry?
Checkist.
No,
It's about
no.
it's so the Russian Cheka was before the KGB, and the movie is pretty much soldiers or officers bringing people down to a basement, having them strip off their clothes and killing them, and that's what the movie's about. As the officers slowly go insane, and it's the monotonous, repetitive nature of all the different types of bodies, all the different types of people, and the relentless death over and over and over again. Because you're both trying to give your characters in the movie and your actual
Uh-huh.
audience a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
That's
Uh
one.
Dorian, if you are listening, that's going on the chainsaws aside. Sorry, chainsaw. The iceberg as a side diversion. Yeah. I'll get back to you, Heather. Thank you. Yeah. All right.
But it's also
Um,
like the movie that I like. It's a social political film. Not that again, like
Okay.
movies need to be social political, movies need to have a message, though it's hard to do that because I think Alan Moore said all art is propaganda, but it definitely is. Like I
You will
love
say that.
movies about wars or fascism that really show it, that really go, this is horrific.
Yeah.
And I'm not even gonna put a judgment on the movie. I'm just gonna show it to you because again, in these movies, it is the audience that needs to interpret what they're seeing. Because a lot of these lenses of movies that are considered evil or rough, they don't take a lens that anything's gonna be okay. They're not taking a lot of moral lenses on the project because it's up to you. Because if like
Hmm.
if I show you something
Hmm.
evil and horrible, it
Hmm.
is the audience that's saying that this is evil and horrible. The movie's just showing it for the audience to have that response.
Yeah.
Because where is the judgment in the movie Solo of what the aristocrats are doing to the kids? There isn't. There's just like the camera's here and I'm going to show you what's going on. It
It's
is us.
observational. It's an observational
Yeah.
viewpoint of the Salo, definitely, which makes it more disturbing, in my opinion. Yeah, when it's put on to the viewer. But you got to answer these questions about yourself, definitely. And that is part of horror. Yeah, horror is therapy, not across the board, but it can be. We've seen that in recent times with the elevated horror of A24, etc., etc. Trauma is being the in thing for a minute
But
now.
also
Yeah.
being around ridiculous stuff and laughing and
Hmm. Hmm.
creature features.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And even put it,
Hammer movie.
and even to go to the general fair, the jump scare. You know what I mean? You scare,
I love a
you
jump
scream, and
scare.
then you laugh with your friends. At the
I
cinema,
love it. People
or
who look
cuddling
down at a
up,
jump
whatever.
scare. People who look down at a jump scare, they're in the wrong place.
They're in the
Art
wrong
is about,
place. Yeah.
about being provoked, and that's just a technique
Yes.
of provoking. I don't care if it's a cheap shot because it works,
Yes.
and that's why you do it. And I love to jump at a jump
Absolutely.
scare.
Absolutely. Do you like to laugh? It's the same physical
Yes,
response.
I love comedians. My favorite comedy is Raising Arizona.
Okay, good choice. Oh, favorite comedy. I have to think on that
And in
one.
horror, we have laughing, screaming, so they are related.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, laughing, screaming. Favorite comedy. Half Baked. I know it's basic. Yeah. I'm a stoner. I'm a Chappelle fan. So back then, more so, he's a different beast nowadays, but that's another discussion. But that aside, digressing. Favorite scary non-horror film, Heather, if you please.
Scary. This is because it's something that's scary and not a horror film. Because it's some of them that we mentioned, but they're not necessarily scary. I may have to pass because it may take me too long to think about something that's both scary and not a
Mhm,
horror movie.
mhm, mhm. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'll throw mine out there. I'll keep it comedic as you threw out, an interesting one for the Breakfast Club. I'm going The Notebook. That terrifies me.
Never. Oh, I see the position. Yeah, there's a lot of rom-coms out there that are a problem. There's like this counterculture guy who was telling me like that his favorite movie is The Notebook, and I play it back in my head all the time. Like, how could he say something like that?
Yeah, it's not just not for me. I never want to shit on someone else's work on a movie, etc., et cetera, et cetera.
Because it's not
But
for us.
that's just
It's not
so much not for me.
there's films that like are because it's hard as horror films because there's films that are technically not great that are amazing like movies like Things and things like that, so we don't kick them out of bed. We love them. There's movies that don't miss their mark. There's so many ways of just defining what is a bad and horrible movie, but for horror fans it's not that it like doesn't work. It's not like because you shot it on like $5. We have big hearts for the stuff that we want to watch. Big hearts.
Yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. But I'm on a serious note, I would throw out something like Threads, yeah, nuclear war documentary.
Threads is good. I have that on Blu-ray. We were mentioning a lot of Severant titles. You should bring David on for an interview.
Cool.
David Gregory is the best in my friend,
Right.
so
Cool,
he's
cool.
awesome. But yeah, he put out Threads.
I know of Severin, of course. Yeah, they do
Put
great
out, yeah,
work.
he put out a movie that I love. That's not,
Good
here you
man.
go. A movie that's not a horror movie. Okay, I have an answer. This is the answer. A movie that is not a horror movie that is unbelievably difficult to watch, and a movie that I buy for people who haven't seen it is Killing of America.
Ah, yeah, that's a good
America
choice.
is like a shock
Yeah,
documentary. You wouldn't
yeah,
really consider it a narrative horror film related to, but it's a real death documentary.
yeah. That it is. That it is.
So if people want to watch that and be like incredibly upset and
Mhm,
disturbed, watch
mhm,
Killing of America.
mhm.
And then you might need a palate cleanser. Then you watch Practical Magic, I think. You calm down. That's what my friend Carolina says. It's like when you watch something intense, you need a palate
Oh
cleanser. You got to
yeah,
watch Magic.
yeah,
You watch
yeah. That's
Irreversible and you watch Practical Magic.
love it, love it. Nightlights, if you will. Uh, that's why I watch. That's why I listen. That's why I listen to comedy. I'm a big fan of stand-up. Yeah, when I need a
So
break from the intensity, yeah, I turn to the funnies. Yeah,
also
yeah.
intense. That's also intense.
Oh
Like I
yeah,
love,
yeah, yeah.
and I watch a lot of comedy, but I've always loved stand up. So the idea of captivating an audience and folks with just words, I've always found fascinating. And you're gonna
Yeah,
get that in stand ups. You're gonna get that in cult leaders. You're gonna get that like in like the
absolutely.
evangelical.
Professional wrestlers with their promos. Yeah,
All of that,
80,000
all of that
people.
is
That sort of thing.
fascinating. I used to do
Yeah,
some carnival talking back in the day
fantastic.
on
Okay, cool.
Seaside Heights.
Yeah,
So I love that. And it's used for evil, it's used for good, it's used for neutral. It's
yeah.
fascinating. I guess because it's listening to, in part of it, it might be charisma.
It definitely is charisma. And we see the power of charisma, certainly in your own country there. Certainly nothing, no shade whatsoever. You know, I'm a fan of the
Oh,
America, but
there should
we
be big
we
shade
see it.
going on
We
in America.
we see it down here. We see it down here. It's quite the TV show. I'm again, I'm viewing the horror through jokes. Yes. Yeah. And the
Well, it
horror,
would be
of course,
very,
is towards uh, the the politics that is happening in your country at the moment. It's intense. It's crazy. Sorry, I don't mean to. No offense whatsoever, but it's
no, I'm not.
viewing it from an outside perspective. It's like, what is happening? I know it's another discussion entirely, but yeah.
There are answers about why things are happening. Also, that this has been a plan for a very long time in the Republican Party, that everybody
Hmm.
knows. Uh, One reason, to go back to Killing of America, to why people should watch it, is because it's about gun
Please.
violence, and so
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
now, it's
Yeah.
very now, and
Yeah.
it's gun violence in the 70s.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Interesting. Interesting.
And it has
We bet.
serial killer interviews at the end of the movie with like Manson and Ed Kemper, and then Manson
Oh,
killer. But it's when you could go down to California and
okay.
interview
You
the
convinced me.
notorious criminals,
Okay.
which sort of got in the way of my Al Adamson doc, because you can't just find a person who's incarcerated and interview them. So there's like
Interesting.
various techniques to get to them, which is like,
Uh, mm.
I made it happen, but yeah.
We banned our guns 20 something years ago now here because there was a massacre down in Tasmania, the Port Arthur massacre, mass shooting. But violence still persists. And we see that in our cinema down here in Australia. You ever seen Snowtown, Heather?
I have not seen Snowtown, but I think that the human race is a violent race. But I think if we remove some of the ARs, we could kill people less. There's
Oh
less
yeah,
people get at a
yeah.
school
Oh
or in a
yeah.
massacre or a mass.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't believe that removing these weapons.
No,
It
no,
might
that's my point with
might be able to
Snowtown. The
save us.
Snowtown murders are horrific murders that happened with no guns. Yeah, in Australia. Yeah, after
Yes.
banning the guns here. Um, but my point in saying that, sorry, I'm tired. The point in saying that is that the violent nature will exist, but of course, the Snowtown murder, if they had had guns, so that's my point. If they'd had guns, yeah, what they would have done to those people who were homosexual people, put them in barrels, it's absolutely horrific. Would have been way, way worse. Sorry, my apologies. Tired. After you.
So that's fine. Yeah, America. I don't know why they need their guns. I grew up with them because of my father, which is why I have the most incredible gun safety on set in the entire world, because I know what they do.
Cool.
And I think
Cool.
a
Yeah.
lot of people who have
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
fired a gun don't really can't conceive that this was made. The only reason this thing was made was to kill something,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Totally.
how
Totally.
powerful it is and
There's
how quickly you can end life by it.
there's no argument from me. No, those are they're horrific things. I don't live with
Thinking
them,
about
never
those
want to
in the
live with them.
world,
Yeah. Yeah.
just don't get it. Don't get like why you would want to ban it. Why you need to be so critically safety
No, I
on set.
totally get it. Yeah,
Don't
totally get
understand.
it. Yeah.
And not only like this kills people, but how profoundly that something was manufactured to do that in such a precise and clean way. And when I used to handle them, they always felt like unbelievably dangerous to me.
Yeah, I've held one once, and I've shot one once on a short film, and it's a lot. Definitely, you feel the coldness, you feel the death on it. You literally feel the
Yes.
death on it. Yeah, yeah. And no
I
one
don't know
needs
why
that. No
others
one
in
needs that.
America don't. I don't know why
Yeah.
they don't.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I
But
feel you. And that
is it again the lack of empathy?
oh, it's rough. It's tough. It's tough. It's awkward for me because I don't live there and I haven't grown up with with it, but it has to be to some degree. It has to be to
Well,
some
the idea
degree.
that there's a cause and effect to the thing that you're holding and the object that you're holding must speak of like some sort of maybe lack of empathy on their end. Because I'm not just thinking about myself and the object. I'm thinking about myself and the object and what's on the other side of the
Oh,
object.
always. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. What's part three of this equation? What's the consequence of why
And I
this was made? Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And maybe they refuse to look at the math of that situation.
Yeah, because it is basic math. Yeah, definitely it is basic math. Um, but thankfully, we have horror films, we have creative people out there, we have a creative community of wonderful alternative freaks that is goddamn around the globe, yes, which is, I think, what we've seen here tonight, children. Heather is out there in New York, and you're around the goddamn globe doing this as well. I see you around the globe, you know, giving back to what this art form, this community, this culture has given to you, and putting your own out there, to help it grow, which is what we're trying to do down here. Yeah, so we could basically have a fun time with our art and life, and not and hopefully not that builds towards just a better planet. Yeah, I'll say it. I'll
Yes.
say it. Yeah, without things like guns and prejudice and all that shit. Yeah,
Yes. I
yeah.
do tell people that I'm going to die in a sexist and racist American society because I feel all that stuff is really tied up into capitalism.
Hmm.
That's really hard to break. But I think Black Mansion and the stuff that I do, it's like within my footprint and the people that I work with, is that there is change on that scale.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
have
yeah.
the finances to go in and make this huge change, but I can create messaging and work with my folks, and we can all work with a certain way with the world and other people. And through that, I think that's where change could be. But I
Mhm.
don't necessarily believe that these things are inside the system as possible. I think you create something smaller that's outside the system, but's lodged next to the system, that those radio
Yeah,
waves can be transformative, because
yeah,
that's
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
important. And also I want to say, when we talk about the idea of like the isms, what's insane is that when I talk about disability or hiring people that aren't white or people of all like different genders, is that that shouldn't be something that I'm congratulated for. That's like basic. Like what
Yeah.
I'm bringing up is like so basic. It's like
Yeah.
someone is talented and has a story. Let's tell that story. Someone's great for this job. Let's hire them. And not
Yeah.
have all also because like in New York City, my friends are from all different backgrounds and all different cultures. And when we talk about authenticity, we do not eat Taco Bell here. Like we find a beautiful food truck that an abuela runs, and that's where we get our food because that's about
Right.
community. That's about like
Yeah. Yeah.
directly hanging out with the culture and the people and being buddies with that. And I think that's that also. And my grandfather, we were always in the city. We were always in Chinatown. We were always walking around the city. We were always part of
You were
culture.
outside. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the world,
I love it.
the world is just bigger than what you see in the mirror.
Yeah.
And that in design, this is what I say, like when I used to work in design, is that we can all believe we're the most brilliant artists in the world, but when you surround yourself with other brilliance, with other eyes, you get to
Hmm.
see it will elevate any kind of work exponentially, but also you're able to see the world. To truly see the world, you need other eyes that aren't yours.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't have put a bit of myself. Could not have put a bit of myself. Yes. You play a fantastic chess game with life there, Heather. You play a fantastic chess game with life, and I try to do the same. And so that's why I wanted to come on tonight. So I thank you. Yeah, no, you have an inspiring perspective on things and a brilliant approach because I can't stand the mainstream approach. I can't stand the traditional path for entertainment, art, culture. Yeah, life, etc. And I think you're a really good representative of that. And that's why I wanted you on here to help just promote that more than whatever film you're on now. But yes, promote that. Absolutely glad you could do that. We'll get to plugs in a sec. But really, just how you look at life and how you look at doing things. That's why I wanted you on, and you've beautifully encapsulated that here this morning, tonight. Yeah, yeah. So thank you for that. Yeah. Do you have anything to plug that you want to plug that you haven't already?
Just follow me and my cohorts on Instagram, on social media, have a conversation with us, reach out. That's it.
Yeah,
Come hang
exactly.
out.
Yeah.
Follow Elise, Louise, Ethan,
Hmm.
Alice, Avery, all the wonderful crazy people that work for me in my land of misfit toys. Just do that.
Love it.
Talk to them. Have a conversation with me. Follow me on Facebook. We could talk about cool stuff.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
could
Cool.
talk about Friday the 13th part 7. We could talk about melancholia. There's a big spectrum. Because a lot of my
Yeah.
social media, like Facebook, I run like a bulletin board system and I just put things up and I love to hear people talk because I feel my voice is already platformed. So because of that, you step aside and the stage belongs to everybody else. I also DJ,
Hmm.
and I think that's a big sense of me as well, is that I like to be in the corner behind creating the vibe and the
Hmm.
culture so everybody
Hmm.
else can party and do their stuff.
That's absolutely fantastic. I love that. Yeah, so follow Heather up, follow everyone Heather works with. We will tag it all up when we post this, when we share this there, Heather. Absolutely. From our end, always shout out to Evil Corp, shout out to Kate and everyone there, to the crew. See you on Saturday. As always, if you haven't been, I don't know why you haven't there, Brisbane, come check it out. We've got all sorts of things happening. We've got a goddamn play that I'm going to be in for the first night, if you catch this in time, which is House of the Thousand Corpses meets Scooby Doo. That's going to be running for a few weeks. Come check that out. And and also everyone else at Escape Manor, everyone else on Evil Popcorn, and you children of the popcorn always for following us into the dark here. And like Heather says, as I always say, I don't care about smashing the subscribe and ring that bell and all that bollocks. Talk with us. Yeah. Tell us what you're into, tell us what you're not into, and we'll talk with you. And yeah, and I think this talk has been over and it's been a fantastic talk there, Heather. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on again. And yeah, this has been Missed Popcorn for Evil Popcorn with Heather Buckley, keeping it punk rock. Peace.